Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours with Cloud Posse, your weekly dose of insider DevOps trends, AWS news, and Terraform insights, all sourced from our sweetops community, plus a live Q&A you can't find anywhere else. It's November 20th, 2024. I'm your host, Eric Osterman. Real quick, I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator for AWS infrastructure that helps teams deploy their software faster. And we do this by using our over 200 Terraform modules that have been battle tested and downloaded over 100 million times. So if you or your team has been banging your head against the wall with Terraform, just head over to cloudposse.com/meet. Again, cloudposse.com/meet, answer a few quick questions, and you'll book a meeting with me directly. So how can you maximize today's session? First off, our format is very informal. Engage as much as you'd like, ask questions, and if you're curious about any of our open source tools or modules, go for it. For those on the recording, we host these calls live, so don't miss out. You can join us by going to cloudposse.com/officehours. Again, cloudposse.com/officehours. I do have one ask. If you find any portion of today's session valuable, please share it with your team. Just head over to youtube.com/cloudposse in a few hours. We'll have a video posted there, and it's a great way to get everybody on the same page. So let's get into those news and announcements.
Eric, you're not sharing your screen?
Oh, really? That is weird. It says I'm sharing my screen. Matt?
I can see the YouTube thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can see your mouse
Yeah.
moving. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And here are those news and announcements. You guys see that? All right. Sounds good. Okay. A lot of exciting announcements to get through. I admit I have not maybe gone totally deep on all of them, but I think there's a lot of exciting things that's happened in the past week here. All right. First one is centralized management of AWS root credentials, or basic, not necessarily the credentials themselves, but the way you get root level access to accounts in your organization is now a first class feature in AWS. So the announcement is here, and they go through technically how to go about it. If we start with the problem, conventionally when you create a new AWS account, you give it an email address like that. Anybody who has access to that email address can do a password reset, and provided you don't have an SCP in place, or to deny root logins entirely, or to have MFA enabled with that account, then it's a great way to take over an entire AWS account. So one of our best practices has always been to reset the password on every account and set up MFA on every account, just to eliminate that vector. In addition to optionally doing SCPs, but SCPs are also problematic because sometimes you actually do need to log into those accounts, and then you need to lift that policy. So in this new implementation, you can enable root credential management as a feature, and they show some examples here, basically assuming the root capability and doing something with an S3 bucket or unlock bucket policy. I'm not sure exactly everything they're doing here, but what's also nice about this is it's in the whole IAM paradigm, and you're given temporary STS credentials which expire, so you can do root level operations, therefore, with this without creating or provisioning any or using any AWS hard-coded keys. Matt, anything I kind of glanced over there or missed?
Not that I picked up. It seems pretty easy.
Yeah, very excited about this, and we'll need to go and update our reference architecture.
Does this mean that they're going to turn off those annoying security hub config findings about root user and?
Yeah, so if you have a control tower with some of the default controls set up, what is it going to say if you're using this? I'm not sure if the policies have to what degree the policies would trigger, and if they've been updated to support this particular way of accessing it. They don't mention control tower in here.
Yeah, it's actually an AWS config rule that gets enabled by all of those things, that if you use root credentials basically in there, if you don't have like MFA tokens on root, like there's a whole bunch of checks for depending on which frameworks you have enabled in config. There's a whole bunch of warnings. I would hope that they would update all of their controls based on based on their new best practices, but sometimes it takes a while for AWS to catch up with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. This is also really exciting. Remember that whole attack vector I was just talking about, doing a password reset on the member accounts, and if they don't have MFA, this prevents that credential recovery. All right. Next announcement. So I guess this is AWS gearing up for reInvent. There's an overload of announcements at reInvent, so maybe they're trying to get some of the lesser ones out. These are pretty big announcements to be releasing before reInvent. So I have high hopes for reInvent this year. So this announcement is a native integration now with the ALB with CloudFront and adds WAF. So this simplifies, therefore, provisioning. So you can literally just provision an ALB, get CloudFront caching on the fly, and the WAF capability without needing to separately deploy WAF, separately deploy CloudFront.
Yeah, but notice one click. How do you
Yeah.
do that as code? You probably still have to do it the same way.
Well, okay, fair, good point. Yeah, so the way they talk about it is ClickOps, obviously a pervasive problem in AWS, but I'm guessing, AWS has this API first mantra now, right? That these things should be supported first by the API and then by the UI. But is this just a wizard for setting those things up through the UI? And if so, that's okay. Oh well, sorry for teasing.
Yeah, it's unclear to me. It just calls it an integration that previously required navigating between multiple service consoles. So it doesn't sound like it's actually like a new thing. It just sounds like they're putting a consolidated UI in place to be able to configure the same things under the hood.
Yeah. And nobody's opened an issue for this yet on the Terraform provider. So maybe that is something. All right, let's see here. Next announcement is yeah, so I was a little bit confused on this at first, but I have clarity now. So this is pretty cool actually. And at first I was a little bit confused by the name, Kube Resource Orchestrator. Okay, I think they're going more for a clever acronym than KRO than necessarily what this describes. When I first heard this and being released by AWS, the first thing I thought was ACK. Wait, this is another pizza box team developing the same thing that already exists. And no, it's totally different. So ACK is Amazon controllers for Kubernetes, which this is, maybe will get moved over there at some point. But if you go to like AWS Kubernetes, is it operators? I forget the GitHub org that they have. Controllers, Kates, that's what it was. So this is where the AWS has a lot of different controllers for Kubernetes, which is pretty cool. Like if you're familiar with the whole I was gonna say control plane, not control plane, not backplane.
Cross plane.
Thank you. Cross plane concept. Then this is Amazon's kind of response to that managed by AWS. So they provide custom resources for RDS, custom resources for S3, and the list goes on. So when they announced this, I was thinking that, and this is not that at all. So what they've done is they've come up with a custom resource type that lets you group other Kubernetes resources together. Think like your ingress, your secrets, your config map, your deployments, your cron job, and manage those as a collective unit. The closest way I can think about it is if you're familiar with the CLI approach of doing the same thing, a la Helm, this is like, what if Helm actually were just a native way of packaging together all the resources that comprise an architecture? Of course, Helm does a lot of other things, and it has templating and parameterization and things like that. And it's not clear to me yet if this has a concept of like inputs that you can disseminate through that resource group, but you can now manage that resource group as a whole. So let's say you have multiple applications deployed to the same namespace. Historically, it was really messy to understand how those related to each other. You would see them named different, maybe you adopt a convention where everything has a consistent prefix to everything deployed there, and you see, therefore, by relationship, those are related. Now, with this, and presumably when you look at it through the lens of a resource group, you can see how those logically relate. Obviously, if you still go to a deployment, list deployments, you're still going to see the raw Kubernetes deployments that way. But when you go through this, the KRO interface, then you will see everything logically grouped that way. So I think this sounds really exciting, something to take a look at. Oh, and it goes without saying, I think you can also manage resources, allotments and quotas related to them.
Yeah, when I first saw this, the first thing I thought of is why aren't we just using namespaces to do this? Like, I don't understand. Like, I don't understand it. This is like subdividing a namespace so that you can group all the things related to it under there. I mean, that's the whole purpose of a namespace, is essentially to create a place where you can then put all of a bunch of related things together under that namespace, and then that's how you distinguish them. I didn't quite understand the benefit, and maybe
I
I'm
mean,
just
I
missing
think
something.
namespaces are an analog, but then going back now a few years or so, I remember at one of the KubeCons, one of the popular things were hierarchical namespaces. So ultimately, the idea is people want to group things, and a flat namespace hierarchy is insufficient. So this is taking I guess, approach where it's inside a namespace, while the previous implementations I've seen were implementing this concept of the hierarchical namespaces. So
Yeah.
I also like the idea of being, well, okay, so what you said is true. One can accomplish a lot of the same things using namespaces, but then you have a lot of namespaces. And what is the logical relationship of those namespaces? Again, we're back to square one.
Yeah.
It's by prefix. So
Or a label that
yeah,
labels that they're all related, and then that's how you figure it out, right?
yeah. And we all love the labels that GitHub added to help us organize all of or the custom properties that help us organize all of our hundreds of repositories.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think labels are great and effective, but they don't convey hierarchy very well. And I would like something for that.
Yeah, although like the thing that bothers me about this is it's like this is a third party inventing something for Kubernetes. It's not native to
Native Kubernetes.
Kubernetes.
That's
So,
yeah.
yeah,
And I should be mentioned that this is an AWS Labs project.
yeah,
This Labs is their skunkworks projects, right? These may never see the light of day. These can get abandoned, or these can serve to influence other projects that replace it entirely. So I would look at this as a early preview of functionality they're proposing.
yeah. And then what happens to your production deployments once you've used this and they abandon it? That gets scary.
Kind of, but fundamentally, it's all Kubernetes primitives under the hood. So it's deployments, cron jobs, everything else. It's just that this management layer that you're using to facilitate it is gone. Or
Yeah. Well,
abandoned.
there's custom resources, right? That then pull together all the, I mean, there have to be custom resources that to group all this stuff
Yeah.
somewhere, right?
It's
So
just that even if you were to destroy, presumably, that controller or that controller is broken, your resources continue to work just as fine, just like a deployment is related to a
yeah,
is
yeah,
related to
yeah.
a pod.
My only point was basically just like you have all these resources that come from a thing that aren't supported anymore, and now some of your deployments have that you can no longer deploy using that same functionality, like the
Yeah,
same way going forward, like where like if it's like they can abandon this anytime they want without Kubernetes support policies and public comment and public announcements, like if this were actually built into Kubernetes, like there's a
yeah.
much bigger risk there, from at least that's how I would view it.
And
So
welcome to the whole landscape of Kubernetes controllers.
yeah, of
They're
course.
like the landscape is littered with weekend projects teaching myself Go, so to say. I've
Yeah.
seen so many of those that do something really cool, but they're dead on arrival. All right. Any questions on that before we move on? I see there was some chat I was ignoring here. Let's take a quick look.
I think that was just on the first one that there was some confirmation that it looked like that
Um,
the ALB thing was console only.
okay. Web console only for clarification. I hate that they've commandeered console for their web console, because when I hear console, the first thing I think is command line terminal. All right. Next announcement. All right. Anyone who jumped on board the hype train of the Jake Paul Tyson match last Friday, myself included. Yeah, it was pretty exciting. I love the energy around it. It was a pretty boring match, unfortunately, in the end, if you waited the full like 4 hours or whatever it was, 5 hours to get to it. But the streaming was abysmal. And this is coming from Netflix, who like has talked about how much they all the things they do to enable high availability failover, and I guess there's just a big difference between streaming one live event versus streaming God knows how many movies and other content.
Yeah,
Matt?
they actually in some I read somewhere, one of my friends sent me an article that I was reading, and they said that they well, there's two things I want to bring up. So one is that they said that at the peak they had 65 million concurrent streams running.
Wow.
So if you think about that, that is absolutely gigantic, of how that is, and I don't think they had anticipated that many, and they estimated that it was like 140 something million people that ended up watching the fight on that. So, um, but then the second thing is that it's not just Netflix, and I think actually that's what Alex is kind of writing in there, but it's not just like Netflix in their data center running a bunch of these things. Like Netflix actually has points of presence, like at like a ton of different ISPs, especially like residential cable ISPs and those types of things, where they have physical boxes that, like, the first person who watches, whatever the new version of whatever the latest show is on Netflix, it pulls it down to that edge location, and then it basically caches that content in that edge location. So they're just streaming all those things like from that edge location to everyone that's in that like edge location. This is literally like a live event that has a central point of distribution, and everyone has to make their way back to that central point of distribution to see it live. What was interesting for me is I watched the whole thing with a bunch of my friends, and one of my friends, like we're in my living room, and when they showed Mike Tyson in just this jockstrap my friend decided that he wanted to rewind and see if he actually saw what he thought he just saw, and spent 20 or 30 seconds like being like, oh, I can't believe they just showed that. We shouldn't have, like, why are they doing that? But then just hit play again from that point, and we never had a buffer or a restream or anything else the entire time. So I wonder if just being 30 seconds behind live was enough, like, not to have any problems, because we had some local buffer, like on my device basically at that point. Because like I didn't even know this was a problem until like the next day. I had, like, all my friends were posting about
Oh,
how bad,
really?
like how
Yeah.
bad it was, and the quality sucked. And I was like, we watched the entire fight and didn't have like a single frame that was out of sequence or pause or buffering or anything the entire time. So I was like, huh, that's weird. So I don't know if that had anything to do with our brief 30-second rewind, but just another
Interesting.
aside. Yeah, so I'll be quiet about it at that point. That's all I had to
Yeah,
add.
I admit that, yeah, there were times I went to replay, and there were times I switched because I didn't realize that the match was going to happen several hours later. So there were multiple times I started and restarted. Um, and yeah, that's when I had a lot of the problems, and then it would constantly degrade right for the action shots. It would just become like the 1 megabit signal.
Yeah,
This is
that's crazy.
BAM is so favored by, well, pretty much everybody. I think HBO was using BAM for a while to
And
deliver.
what is BAM?
BAM, baseball something media. They're the groups that it was originally part of Major League Baseball. They are the ones responsible for streaming all the baseball games live. And they were the pioneers in live streaming, live events like that at a massive scale. And so far, they're the only ones who've been doing it consistently well, to the point that Major League Baseball spun it off as a separate corporation, a separate company called BAM Media.
Interesting.
And I know, I'm almost positive that HBO used BAM for their initial launch of streaming media.
So curious there on that. But one of the things I heard was that traditional media has the benefit that not 100% of the streams are online, that they're offloaded to some degree by the conventional cable networks and over the air or whatever. Do you think that exasperated this? And are there any other networks, BAM included, that have ever had such a large online streaming experience, live streaming experience?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think BAM handles that kind of volume because remember, they're not just streaming one. I guess it's not just streaming one event that's live. They're streaming but they're streaming all of the Major League Baseball events live simultaneously.
That's true.
And also, I think BAM is probably the ones streaming the Super Bowl.
yeah, but I don't think there's ever been a single event that has had that many live streams at a time. Even the Super Bowl, while it has like 100 million viewers around the world, like the vast majority of that is over like broadcast networks on cable companies. It's not, over some streaming service. So I think this is probably the biggest one that they've ever done. And I know that they had tested a few things, like they did the big like Tom Brady roast not that long ago. And they did that, but that I think they topped out at like 25 million streams or something like that of that roast, they were saying, and this was literally like 2.5 times the size of that. So I don't even know how you would, like, how would you load test that? I mean, that's like crazy. So
Yeah.
According to streamingmediablog.com, this was the largest streamed event at 65 million streams, second to 59 million streams for the Cricket World Cup in 2023. And the rest of the top ones, I was wrong. They're all those 59, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all hosted by Disney on their Hotstar platform.
Hmm. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if they get their act together in time for, they've won a number of other contracts now, I understand. Is it with the NFL and what was the other one?
Wrestling.
Wrestling, yeah.
WWE wrestling, I think,
yeah.
yeah.
So very interesting. Well, I hope they come out with a post-mortem for the rest of us geeks to kind of learn kind of you know what went well and what didn't. All right, next.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
no, sorry, I was just going to jump in and say, yeah, I'm excited to see a postmortem as well. Um, just because I work with other streamers, and yeah, mad respect to Netflix for doing what they did. As I was watching the event, everybody was like, "Oh, the Wi-Fi is bad," and I'm like, "No, that's not the Wi-Fi. That's Netflix." But they pulled through, and yeah, that if they do post a writer postmortem, I'm interested to see what they reveal as the problems and any potential workarounds. So yeah, shout out to Netflix though, because they really killed it on that one.
Yeah, I thought the same thing that it must be me, it must be Comcast. But then when I went to Twitter or X, I saw just, yeah, it was brutal, the comments out there. All right. Next one for all of you interested in LLMs was a project open sourced by NVIDIA. I don't know if there's prior art for something similar like this, but a LLM vulnerability scanner. Basically checking that your LLM isn't failing in ways that you didn't expect. Not an area I'm as attuned to. If anyone has more opinions on this kind of thing, or is this interesting or not interesting? Is this, to me, it kind of seems like vaporware a little bit. Like, can this really do anything that is novel that we couldn't just do by running a bunch of tests and looking at the results? What is this doing that's unique?
It says unmap for LLMs, so
I think
Interesting. Oh, so testing
It's-
other common attack vectors maybe, or
Yeah, it seems like this is it's actually like a white hat way to try to make your LLM fail and give up what
Got
its vulnerabilities are.
got it. Almost like fuzzing, maybe for LLMs, or
Yeah, I mean it's like all the static analysis tools that check for like the OS like top 10 and all of
yeah,
that kind of stuff. This is basically trying to see if there are like SQL injections available in your LLM, the equivalent of that, to see if you can make it fail in ways that you didn't expect it to fail.
yeah,
Like early chat GPT, some people were able to like get chat GPT to disclose information about its internals and how it was trained and all of that kind of thing. Like that would be a vulnerability like you would be able to
yeah,
presumably find from something like this.
yeah. Very cool. So this is more just tangentially related. Probably most of us have used Chrome at some point. In the past year, I've switched over to using Arc and really love it. Obviously, it's based on Chrome technology under the hood. So this is interesting that antitrust officials may be seeking that Google sell off Chrome. Um, and curious what you guys' thoughts are. Is that good or bad? Can other companies actually sustain what Chrome has done under Google's shadow? And given the landscape of browsers that are struggling or gone away, I think it's a hard business. And I think Chrome has worked because it's with Google. I don't know that it would work well standalone. Any other more sophisticated opinions on that?
I'm actually questioning how they value Chrome? Like, how many people here pay for a browser?
Yeah,
So there you
virtually.
go.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So like
Yeah.
how could this as a, I mean, like the reason that Chrome is like has so much invested into it and so much free is because um you are the customer.
Yeah.
Or you are the product, I should say, not the
Yeah.
customer. By using the data that you're giving Google, essentially by using all of this stuff is how they're funneling a portion of that back to make this browser so good. I don't see a bunch of people signing up for, $9.99 a month to use the Chrome browser, out there, that kind of thing. So I don't see how else they make money. Like that doesn't make sense to me. Um, the other thing, just commenting on your browsers are hard. I was really kind of disheartened because I've also been an Arc convert that if you follow the Arc guys on X, they're talking about how they've decided that they want to build a different browser that's
What?
AI based and everything else and yada yada yada, and they're a tiny small team and they're going to go off and do that. So that leads me to believe that Arc is not going to be what we want it to be. Like they
Yeah.
basically want to make they want to make a browser that your grandmother can use for everything, and not that power users can use. At least that's my interpretation of everything they've published and all the public signaling that's been going on from them right now. So
Sounds like that's what their investors are asking them, like,
yeah.
how can we do AI? You know.
So I think the message was something around like, how can we build a browser that, that a billion people will use or something like that? Not, and we don't see that as Arc.
Yeah.
And we're going to go build this other browser.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh man.
I agree that Arc is a browser for power users, but yeah, and I think we're underserved in that regard. Huh.
Yeah, so I don't know. Like I'm frustrated. Hopefully it doesn't go away, but their team is too small, in my opinion, to deal with both. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm still miffed that they made it impossible for me to organize my tabs into folders. They got rid of what I consider the most useful thing which was going here, clicking move to, and selecting the folder. Now I have to play mouse gymnastics to drag and drop my links into folders, and that's not working well for me. So I stopped.
yeah. There's a few other bugs that have like there's one that I've been following for a long time that if you they have like one of the when you swipe to those like power tabs where you can go to all the different things, if you click
Mhm.
on downloads and you have more than like a couple hundred files in your downloads folder, Arc basically becomes unusable for a few minutes.
Huh.
So, and then it eventually comes back. And their answer is that that's like an edge case. And I was like, every developer I know has like thousands of things in their downloads folder, so that's definitely not an edge case. But the
Yeah.
the whole point is they're not fixing those kinds of bugs because they're off like
Yeah. Chasing
they're
the
off
AI.
like doing on this new browser stuff. So I was disappointed by that.
I'm curious, did you disable the AI search in Arc? Yeah, same. It was useless and annoying.
Yeah,
Other than
with
that,
it.
it's really good. I know it sounds like we're bashing on them,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
if you're a developer and you haven't given Arc a fair chance yet, you are missing out until they change it.
Yeah. And I think with the number of AI things, like every product has AI built into it. So if it runs on your machine, like I just see like new future versions of every manufacturer's thing is gonna have to ship with like way more GPUs to keep up with all these desktop based AI things that they're sticking in there. So
Yeah, remember when the app you were installing fit on a 1.44 meg floppy disk, and then there was a doubler, so you got it to 2.888, and that was just
yeah.
amazing. Then CDs came along, and now it's like, oh, you're gonna have to download an LLM with that.
Yeah. I'll date myself and say that I think I started with the 360K floppy
Oh yeah,
disk.
the 5.5 would have been
So,
five and a
yeah.
quarter. Yeah,
And
same.
then they had the tools so that you could notch the floppy disk, and then the real like floppy disk, not the 3.25 and the 3.5 inch ones. And then they made the punches so that you could put the punch in the, like you were saying, in the 1.44 meg ones that would give you 2.8. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, those were the days. All right, next one, just another nostalgic announcement. Boy, it was pretty awesome when Let's Encrypt came out. I just didn't realize that was 10 years ago now. So that's a long ways to have come. Next announcement. There's another one of these tools we've been using over the years. It's in our Cloud Posse packages repository. This was a new one. If you're automating things, for example, in cron jobs or other shell scripts, and there's something that consistently fails but works with a retry, you can always do the naive, sleep 10 seconds, sleep 1 minute, whatever. That's fine. If you want something more sophisticated, this is a Go utility that implements, a common backoff algorithm with exponential backoffs, max retries, infinite retries, jitter, so you're not hitting, every hour on the hour, every minute on the minute type of thing. So another tool for the quiver. Or arrow for the quiver, tool for the toolbox. All right, leveraging AI. This one I did not get a chance to read through yet. I bookmarked it and wanted to look at it. I just thought it was interesting. It seems like a nice use case for AI to help with accelerating remediations. And that being a key aspect of incident response, giving people everything they need to know so they can jump in and respond to an issue. I think this is something Datadog and others are undoubtedly working on or have released maybe even. Anyone tried something like this from other vendors? From their vendors, rather, not that Facebook is a vendor. All right. This caught my attention on Reddit, and I wanted just to bring it up here, see if anybody who has been using CDKTF or the EKS equivalent CDKs. So these are using the the Cloud Development Toolkit as a framework, if you will, and extending it for Terraform support, Kubernetes support. Apparently, there's been no new release in 8 months or so, and that is not cause for alarm by itself. I mean, it could be feature complete. These are basically wrapping more mature underlying tooling, so maybe there's no need for it. Or are there outstanding bugs that you've been waiting on and clarification 6 months without any updates?
I tried once. I didn't like it actually. It's comparing something to Polemy, for example, it's falling far behind actually. Yeah, so no, I'm not gonna buy this. At least for me,
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I saw this article and I was actually confused. I didn't look back that far, but I opened this is like HashiCorp Terraform CDK, right? Isn't that's the
Yeah.
yeah, there's like tons of releases like
You know what?
going back.
I think they're looking at the wrong project. I think
Yeah.
it started at AWS and an AWS repo. This does not appear to be a fork. Maybe it could have been transferred, but if they're seeing it somewhere else, let's see. CDKTF, GitHub.
Yeah, it's that one there. Didn't they have another repository where they were trying to like automatically generate the schema and it just never went anywhere?
You mean this AWS CC provider?
Yeah.
That actually just went GA, I think it was announced. We talked about it here on Office Hours. Its usage pales in comparison to the AWS provider. I think something like every single day there are more downloads of that than the entire history of AWS CC. But that is the direction AWS is going. That is the way they want to invest in, and that's the way they are um, investing their capital towards that. And yeah, I was in speaking with AWS, I was surprised that that is a big priority for them as the AWS CC provider. But yeah, this calls into question that this looks like it's very healthy, everything getting constantly updated. And I think they are looking at some old source.
Yeah, I'm surprised because I tried CDKTF back when it was released and it wasn't ready for anything. I recently went back to try it just out of curiosity, and I saw like really, really good docs on the Terraform website documentation, and it seemed like it was alive. So this was surprising for me. I'm not sure that, I think you're right that they're probably looking at something different. And also the UX was much nicer, and the main thing was it was super slow for some reason. But
I
now
can
it
relate
was
on this.
moving fast. It was fine.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I can relate on the slowness of this because it's like converting everything back to HCL. So you use, for example, Python or TypeScript, but at the end, you just convert that to HCL and then you use the provider binary file or their converter, whatever. So it's like adding another layer on top of Terraform just to use something like TypeScript. So yeah, it's gonna be slow and always will be slow, I guess.
Maybe
Well,
it's one of
it
those
wasn't that
things.
slow when I used it recently. It was slow when it was released. So I think they have definitely made improvements. There is something nice about using the same language that the rest of your app is in to build infra. I can see it being convenient for those that want software engineers to also participate in infrastructure. Plus the fact that I could still use everything I like from Terraform as well, was neat. But I don't know. I need to play with it more to really form an opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you on the last point, actually. It's nice to use one language for everything. Yeah. But for me, I give like Polomy a shot and I find it more convenient, I guess, for me.
Are you using Pulumi daily?
Yeah, daily, yeah.
And you switched over from Terraform?
Yeah, I did like 1 year now. Terraform free, I guess.
Are you doing any Terraform anymore? Or are you entirely on Pulumi now?
Yeah, most of the work like on Polomy, but yeah, once in a while, some
Are
Terraform
you
stuff.
using it strictly in an open source capacity, or are you using it together with Pulumi Cloud?
Good question. It's a mix with GitHub Actions and just the state file on the Polomy Cloud, I guess. So yeah.
Yeah, maybe they're frustrated with the release of the packages. It looks like they've been working on 0.21 for Python and Node now for 10 months and they haven't released yet. It's all pre-release builds.
Okay, interesting. All right, interesting stuff. Next announcement is, this is more like a talking point. We're looking at potentially revisiting building AMIs and have in the past used Packer, never used AWS's image builder. And this was on Anton Babenko's Terraform Weekly newsletter. So I thought it was interesting. Has anyone made the switch from Packer to AWS's image builder? Do you regret it? Do you prefer it? Just curious. Anyone?
I went the other way, but it was probably 5 years ago. We went image builder to Packer.
Oh, you did? Yeah. And Packer's also improved a lot, right? And it's adopted HCL and
Yeah, they did.
yeah.
Yeah, that was a big change.
Yeah.
The
right.
biggest headache for us was we were trying to build CIS images, and the only way to do that reliably and also make it so we could redistribute ISOs was to do the VM import in AWS, and that just takes forever.
So that was a lot more convenient with Packer.
Yeah, Packer was the only thing that could do it. We couldn't do it with Image Builder.
I was gonna say, for what it's worth, I know they charge an hourly premium, but CIS themselves actually publish like all the CIS compliant base images, basically, and I've always found that to be extremely convenient.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the time we needed more. I think the CIS images are only like the level 1, and we needed the level 2.
Oh, I think they have like a whole suite now of offerings, but yeah, I remember that it was limited when they first did it.
Yeah.
All right. Second to last announcement is EFS now supporting cross-account replication. So that could be good for continuity and DR. And final announcement was yet another way to really, really lock down your VPC so it's private only. Lots of ways of doing this with NACLs and I believe SCPs then on top of that. And now you can just declaratively say that this VPC is private and it can never in any way, shape, or form be public. So I guess it serves a lot of purposes. One is the practical one. It's easier to do. You know, when you need to show an auditor, it's literally a feature flag. You don't have to show how all these controls combined mean that it is not public.
So it just blocks the internet gateway?
Well, and any form of public subnets and yeah, I guess you wouldn't be able to launch like a EC2 instance with public IPs, and you don't have to worry about ensuring all the other policies are in place.
So even if you have internet gateway, it doesn't work, no?
It doesn't let you launch internet gateways in that VPC. Basically, it says you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it prevents you from launching like public EIPs. Like you can't get any elastic IPs essentially, like out on the public internet. The one thing that it doesn't do is it doesn't prevent you from routing over a peering connection, and then the peering connection can lead you to or transit gateway, and then those two things could lead you to the internet. It doesn't block that.
All right. So that brings it to the end of the announcements. Any questions we can get to today? Have you stored up any questions for us here?
I don't have a question, but I have a rant and a praise of sorts. And I'll offer a little bit of context to that. So I'm working with servers that are on premises that need to interact with AWS. You might recall my question a few weeks back, about unsigned URLs and everything. But so to sort of emulate the environment that I'm working in, I started working with VMs in Google Cloud. Since they're not in the Amazon Cloud, it kind of replicates the idea of working in a server that's disconnected from AWS. So all that is to say, or I guess that's the scenario. The rant is AWS doesn't allow you to spin up a server and give it a runtime limit, and that's the praise that I want to give to Google Cloud, because I discovered that I'm spinning up these servers and I don't want to just leave them running and run up a bill or whatever. I'm just testing stuff out. So I can spin up a server in GCP and put a max runtime on it for like 3 or 4 hours, and then I know for certain when I'm done with it, if whether I shut it down or not, 4 hours later it's going to be turned off. And so I started looking for that same feature in AWS, and it's like you could do stuff with CloudWatch alarms and Lambda functions and all this other kind of crazy stuff. But I'm like, In Google, it's a parameter. You just put in how much time you want, and it's done. It's like it's so sweet and easy. I'm like, why does nobody else have this feature? So my praise is for GCP for putting that in there. So it's almost like I'm using a spot instance, but it's not really a spot instance.
Yeah.
And my rant is like AWS and maybe even Azure. I haven't looked at Azure yet. Like, why don't you guys have a way to do this easy for everybody?
Yeah, it's strange, but not strange at the same time. Right? There's no financial incentive for them to add that. The other common rant, right, is there's no
Sure.
way to enforce a spend cap on an account. And sure, I get it in the production context, that could be risky. But what if you're operating something that is definitely not in production in any way, shape, or form, a sandbox account, dev accounts, etc. And those are probably the most susceptible to launching something misconfigured and racking up a lot. We had a $15,000 Redshift bill, and all we had done was deploy a test cluster and didn't even deploy a single workload to it or a
Oh wow.
thing to it. And that was 15,000 in about 2 weeks because serverless sounded like it would be cheaper. But that was our lesson.
Yeah, no doubt.
I think you can achieve that with, sorry guys, you can achieve that with Spacelift, for example. You define, of course, you can use Terraform, for example, and define TTL, and then that's it. It should be destroyed after being whatever TTL you choose, I guess.
Well,
So
yeah, I guess my caveat there is I don't want it destroyed. I just want it stopped. Like, say if I'm practicing, I'm working on something during a work day. So from 8 to noon, I'm going to be working on this thing, and I go to lunch and I forget to turn the server off. And I don't come back to it until the next day, 8 a.m. I don't want to have to recreate the environment. I just want it to be stopped. And GCP, it just kind of does that automatically for me.
AWS workspaces support that for what it's worth, and those worked really well for me.
There's actually a way. There's actually a way to do this. Like AWS has a thing published. It's called, I think it's called the AWS Instance Scheduler. And
yeah, I looked at that.
yeah, and it's basically like an AWS solution that they give you a CloudFormation template for that you can just deploy. I think it costs like $15 a month to run this thing, but then once you do that, it can based on tags, it can automatically shut down instances after on a schedule that you support, and the shutdown behavior is stop and it's not terminate, just like you said, so that you can do exactly what you said.
yeah,
And I did look at. I'm sorry, I'm gonna get back to you in a second, Mohammed. I did look at the instance scheduler, but again, it's like to me that's like another. It's like yak shaving almost. It's, to get what I want, I have to do something else.
Yeah.
When all I want to do is spin up the server and use it for a minute.
Agreed. But this is like, just to be clear, this thing is a deploy it once in your organization and set schedules and everything else, and it can reach into cross accounts. The thing automatically creates all the roles it needs and permissions it needs and everything else to auto terminate instances. So I played with it. I have this running on my personal account because I didn't spend 15,000, but I did spend like $2,500 on my personal account accidentally by leaving something running that I thought I had shut down. So, and this thing uses a event bridge and lambdas essentially to take care of all that stuff.
Yeah, just to Michael's point, is like, okay, great.
Agreed.
I'm glad they're transparent about how it is, but sometimes could we just have a feature flag that hide that to me? I don't want to see all of that automatically created in my environment.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, if you want the black box of this is a CloudFormation stack that you deploy. Like you'll see them in the console, of course, but like to get this running, you literally go to the CloudFormation consoles, they deploy this thing and it runs, and it's not that big of a deal. So, but I hear you. Like, it would be nice if it was built in.
yeah, +1 for Google, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
And it's a, oh, there's a, I know you're not, I'm not trying, I know we're in agreement and alignment, Matt, not saying that, it's just another, just lamenting at. And this, my friends, is the architecture of what it takes to start and stop an EC2 instance on AWS.
Yeah, and I think that's the point. I appreciate knowing because I didn't die. I saw it, and again, like looking at the webpage, maybe I saw this and I turned away in 30 seconds. I was like, that's too much. I
well,
appreciate that you could do it once and it works from there on. So
It's
yeah, and or
CloudFormation, one click, deploy, install,
yeah.
done.
yeah,
I mean, to be fair, if you really want to do it, the way you do it is EC2 describe instances dash dash filter tag equals whatever. Um, pipe that to shut to the stop command and run that in
yeah,
cron. I mean, like legit, that will do exactly what you want to do too. But this is
yeah,
a much more elegant solution. So
yeah.
Arguably,
Or
I say, you know, up for debate.
yeah, or a more elegant solution is just having a parameter that says how long do you want to run this server. But
yeah.
I'll put down the mic there. I realize we're close to time, so I'll stop.
Yeah, yeah. No, I hear you. I'm not, no one's disagreeing. I think that it would be nice if it were built in. But given that it's not, this is a pretty simple lift if you want that functionality.
All right. Any other talking points, questions, observations? Well, we're at time. It's like 2 minutes, but hey, any quick ones? We can get to those.
I just wanted to update that when I said the top things were done, top streamers were done by Disney, according to
Yeah.
the website. Disney bought BAM back in like 2018, so it's still
All right. So then it all makes sense. Okay. Okay. Well, thanks for closing the loop on that, Jeremy. All right, everyone. Well, we are at the end of our hour here, so thanks for joining us this week. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. We'll be posting a recording of this session to our YouTube channel. It'll be there in a few hours, and you can also listen to it however you listen to podcasts. So we also syndicate Office Hours as a podcast. Go to podcast.cloudposse.com to get the latest recordings there. If you're curious about working with Cloud Posse and seeing if we can move the needle for your organization, go to cloudposse.com/meet. Again, cloudposse.com/meet. Answer a few quick questions and you'll book a meeting with me directly. Thanks everyone for your time today. See you next week.